to discuss research philosophies and paradigms. Now, some of you might wonder, what does the word paradigm mean? But soon we will learn that. Thank you very much for joining us. I see we are still joining. Those in the waiting room are still being admitted, so we will proceed. Today we have a very interesting panelist who will be sharing his insights from years and years of experience. He's a PhD fellow at Kenyatta University, a PhD fellow of finance actually, and then he has an MBA in finance as well from the UK. He's a member of many institutes. I may not know them in full. IIA, ACCA, ICPAC, and so on and so forth. He's a management trainer and lecturer. He's a management partner at Xavier's Africa Management Consultancy, HOD, audit, and the list goes on and on and on. So today I want to introduce to you Benson Barasa. And today I'd like you to know that hour goes very fast. So please start engaging. Write your comments or questions in the chat box at the bottom of the Zoom. And as soon as the presenter is done, or anywhere during the presentation, the presenter will tell us whether he would like us to ask questions in between or at the end. So Bwana Benson Barasa, you're very welcome. Mwalimu, you can take us through research philosophies and paradigms.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think I'm not worthy what you said, but it's okay.
Could you please, now we can see you. Now we can see you.
Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Proceed. No, I think you've done very well. Your profile is amazing. Okay.
Yes, welcome everyone, and I think we are ready to go. Allow me to share what we will be talking about today. And just as a background, research is never exhaustive. It's a very wide topic, it's a very wide area to study, and it's a very important area that any scholar cannot miss, because it is from the basis that we would want to acknowledge whether you as a scholar or you as an academician, all the years we have gone through in the academia had some meaning into what you wanted to study. And so being one of the core areas of study, many of us as scholars and students also do not have enough time to actually exhaust what is required of it, so as we can come up strongly in terms of research, in terms of giving out our views. So I know, as a matter of fact, that all of us who are on this particular podium, we are coming from different backgrounds. Mine has already been declared, but I want to urge all of us, because research is not tilted a bit,
Right.
depending on which area of study you are in. Research is very key, and
could
therefore,
could you please press F5 so we can see the full slide? Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. It's okay. No problem. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's better.
Now, as Wangare has said, in the beginning of any study, there is an objective of who a student wants, or a researcher or the scholar wants to achieve at the end of it all. And that's why there are questions that normally we would want to ask from the beginning that will guide us or the scholars, whether at the end of it all, we can evaluate ourselves and rate ourselves whether we have achieved exactly what we wanted to achieve at the beginning, or we have gone off the mark. And therefore, because research being a very wide subject, it is a norm that if we do not have the laid down structure, many of us might miss the mark. And therefore, those who came before us were good enough to provide us with the structure and the laid down procedures on what we need to follow in order to achieve what we want to come up with at the end of it all. And therefore, one of the key things that as scholars we need to understand first before we go into the practicality of research, it is the research philosophy and more so the paradigms. I want to declare that this subject cannot end in this particular forum, and maybe God giving us another chance, we'll want to go further to explain and describe the elements that we'll be talking about them. But you feel free at any particular point when you miss off the mark, you can help me to understand so that we can come back and just try to understand the terminologies and the processes that we'll be talking about. Today, I want to explain a few elements about research philosophy. And from the first slide, we will be guided by the questions that I've put there. Number one, why is it important to understand the philosophical assumptions? To some other words, philosophical assumptions are the same as what we call the philosophies or research philosophies. And then we would also want to endeavor to know what are the types of research philosophies. And to this extent, we'll want to close ourselves to the four major philosophical assumptions that exist. More so, majority of us knowing that we involve ourselves into either a quantitative research or a qualitative research. So either of the two will be trying to oscillate between qualitative research and quantitative research and just trying to navigate through and see in either of the field that we choose, what are the things that we are supposed to put in place so that we can come up with a research that is worthy being published. And so the other aim we want to achieve is that why do we have to endeavor ourselves in studying philosophy, interpreting the frameworks that are there, and more so what is the overall importance of research philosophy in the research process. And to make that, at the end of probably this presentation, I would wish that we have a question that you can take home, because we are teachers anyway, we have to give assignments. And so that when we come back, maybe God giving us time, we want to evaluate the difficulties we got through when we were doing that particular assignment or when we were doing that particular research, and how can we be able to go about it in such a time like this when the world is waiting for the answers that will come from the scholars like us. And so also we'll need to ask ourselves, how are these philosophical assumptions embedded in our qualitative study? How does a scholar, how does a researcher put up the instruments that we'll be talking about in all these research phenomena? And so I've begun by giving us the overall overview, which is automatically is like the summary, the end product that we would want to achieve after all this. And so this was adapted from Paul Sanders and the group. Well, some of the key writers in research, some of the best books, and I'm very happy that one of the books was shared yesterday on our group. And when you go there, you'll find a few of these things that we'll be talking about. So I would encourage that we also go and read, because research is a wide reading. And therefore, as we see there, they came up with pictorial representation, of which they call it a research onion. This was as a result of putting together and summing up all the research philosophies, the paradigms, and also structuring each and every paradigm, how they are supposed to come down to the research methodologies up to the end product when we are doing what we call the deductions, or when we are now putting now the interpretation to what we have gone through in the research process. And so from the outer layer of the research onion, that marks the cover of our research. And the cover of our research is what carries the whole thing. Our research is supposed to be explained in a research philosophy. That's why when you look at that pictorial, the last bit of that particular onion is the research philosophy. It is from a philosophy that we will be able to now explain the contents of your research. We'll be able to understand whether your research stands the test of time, whether your research is objective, or whether your research will be useful according to the subject you have chose to carry out research on. And so the inner bit, the second outermost, you will see there are approaches from a research wide angle view of a research. The philosophy stands. And in each philosophy, they are developed approaches. Wait. Yes, I was waiting for somebody to settle.
We lost you a little.
Yes, I was waiting for somebody to settle.
Okay.
So that we can continue. Somebody was coming in. So
All right.
I was saying from the research onion we are seeing on our screen, the outermost cover is the research philosophy. That is what carries all the work of research. It is from a philosophy that we understand reasons why you chose the methods and everything that you put in place in terms of the parameters you chose and even areas of study and all that. And then from a philosophy, we now come with the approaches that one can choose to use. Each particular philosophy has got its own approaches that are supposed to be used. This is where, and I want to stress this, from the experience, students carrying out research, this is where they lose it. Because they mix, you'll find a student explaining from the background that they have chosen a particular philosophy from which we expect now that this particular philosophy, the approaches we expect to find in this philosophy will be this and this and this. But because of lack of knowledge, they mix up the approaches which were not meant for that particular philosophy, and so doing, they mess up the other particular processes at the end of it. And so each particular philosophy has got its own approaches. We'll be able to get through, as you can see from the picture, we have deductive method and we have got inductive. We'll be endeavoring a bit to talk about each in a short while. But in each particular approach, there goes now the methodology of carrying out research. And that's why we have the designs that now come in. We have experiment, we have survey, we have a case study, we have the action research, the grounded theory and the ethnography, together with archival research, and all of them, each one of them is embedded in a particular research approach. If you use deductive, then you will use a particular strategy that we want to apply for us to come up with the outcome. Then from it now, we'll want to see what are the methods did you use to carry out your research, of which either you have decided to go the mono path, where you want only to use one methodology, or you have used the mixed method research, or you have decided to apply the multi-method. And then the type of data that you have decided to choose on, either you have used the cross-sectional, longitudinal, but for us who are in some business or financial field, you might want to use the time series and all that. So you are allowed, but based on the philosophy that we choose. So today, we want to endeavor ourselves into the philosophy. And so I've tried a bit to come up with what the scholars have defined in terms of what is the general definition of a philosophy, as you can see there, and then how is it that now from the general meaning of a philosophy, we can extract what we call a research philosophy. So from the beginning, we understand that a philosophy is only but a way of thinking. It is a study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, the realities that we'll be talking about, and we'll be talking more so in the academic world, the academic discipline, not of the other parts. And then research philosophy is only but a belief about the criteria or the way in which a researcher would want to gather together the information that they would want to research about, and through assembling of tools that would be used in coming out with the objectives and the outcomes that the researcher would want to achieve at the end of it all. And therefore, what does it do? As we said, it relates to the development of knowledge, and more so, also trying to explain the nature of that knowledge. And so, as you're explaining the nature of the knowledge, because it is a scientific process, then it underlines the fact that it must have some assumptions. And therefore, those assumptions are the ones that we would want to talk about. As one put it there, that one's philosophical belief affects the choice of legitimate questions. And as we are aware, we come from different realities, different academic backgrounds, social and even economical backgrounds, and therefore that shapes the way one looks at the world. It shapes at the way one looks at a particular phenomena. Your belief, your understanding about things, and your coming out of about nature will be shaped by some realities, which we now call, which shapes up now who you will be in future or who you are. And so we say that each philosophical position has got advantages, but also it must have also what we call the merits or disadvantages. So it is in natural sense that we as scholars, we need to scavenge through and come up with what we need to use. At the same time, we are allowed to have a mixed feeling about a particular philosophy, so that when you now know, you will be best placed to use exactly what you want from the choices that you will be given. And so the philosophies stress confirmation rather than discovery, because in the world where we are in now, so much has been done in the world of academia that when we'll be coming now to look at now the philosophical foundation, we will divide ourselves into two major branches. Either you are either a positivist or you are a subjectivist. And therefore, what are these philosophical foundations? We want to talk about two today. We want to talk about positivism, and we want to talk about normativism. But for the purposes of this particular presentation, we have got positivism, we have normatism as it's listed there, we have pragmatism. Those are scientific terminologies that we'll be breaking them down in a short while, but also we'll want to look at how do we blend these philosophies into research. And then we'll look at what is the outcome of those philosophies, which part of it is what we'll be studying as empiricism in research. And then we have also what we call paradigms. The paradigms, the scientific approach is one of them. And so, as we have already explained, positivism is one type of a research philosophy that we want to talk about. And more so, I will try to explain it theoretically, but even though it is always good and it comes out clearly when we are doing it practically on the boards. So Angare will allow me today to do that, but next time I think we'll have a board.
Yes, sure. I know Zoom has some limitations, so you cannot be a full teacher, but we'll use what we have.
Yeah. So in talking of, thank you very much, Angare. In talking about positivism, we tend to classify human beings based on the philosophy they believe in. And from the philosophy they believe in, the scientists came up with a criteria of making us be able to classify elements into, as we said, 4 categories, but majorly into 2, depending on the research cluster you are falling in. Amy also deduced that research generally has 2 major objectives, despite having other objectives, but the major ones are 2. One, in carrying out research, either we are carrying out research to fill the knowledge gap. The second one, we are carrying out research to solve a problem. So in the process of filling the knowledge, the researcher will be called a positivist. And that's where we have a philosophy known as positivism. In the opposite, the researcher will be called an interprevist. This is whereby the philosophy that we'll be talking about, which is opposite the positivism, is called interprevism. The positivism, as we have listed there, that the researcher or those who are classified as positivists tend to study about knowledge and acknowledge through factual truth. And in this extent, the researcher at this particular time will not only want to use what we listed there as observation or scientific senses, the 5 major senses, but will also go ahead and document, come up with the ways to be able to measure the type of knowledge that has been gathered. And therefore, who is a positivist? This is a person, or this is a scholar who, in the extent of his or her research, will not only go into the field of research to unwind new truth, but also to go through what is already existing in order to find out the truth or the factual knowledge about the objective that he or she is carrying out. And therefore, the positivism philosophy dictates that a researcher should be able to go through the existing knowledge in search of the new truth. The new truth will come because of the gaps that the scholars who were there before might have left out in the process of carrying out research. Or because of the changing dynamism of the economy of the world and all the academia, things keep on changing day in and day out. And because of that, there's some knowledge that was very relevant in the year 20th century that today you'll find it irrelevant. And therefore, because of the changing times, the scholars will find a gap that will need to be filled or will need to be replaced. And for that purpose, the positivists would go through the existing knowledge to find out the new truth in what we call the factual finding of knowledge. And therefore, there are methods that this particular scholar would want to come up with. And so that's why we're talking about logical positivism, which now includes the going through the theories and all that. And allow me to also allow you to go through so that you can be able to read more and come up with the existing parameters that are set for the positivism philosophy. But from far, what we have explained, you'll find that in positivism, the researcher would not come up with an invention. The researcher will come up with a phenomena explaining the changes or deriving it from the existing gaps or problems that are existing in the current sources of knowledge. And therefore, there will be a lot to carry out in research processes that will be able to come up with that, with the objective of the positivist as a philosophy. And all that I'm giving you in the slides is part of what I've explained that constitutes to the assumptions of the positivism philosophy. As they say, both facts and theories are seen as sources of hypotheses. And here I want to say that the hypothesis process is as a result of a problem, what we call in research, a problem statement, from a problem that existed that gave the objective of why the research should be carried out. Yes.
Margaret, please mute yourself. Okay, please proceed.
Normativism. And I want to request our members that maybe if you feel necessary that I've left out something that we wouldn't want to ask, just proceed on the chat, then we'll be notified to come back and attend to such like questions. So this is the second philosophy. It is also a key philosophy in terms of research because this one oscillates between the others. It is not a standalone philosophy as positivism, but This one is what we call comparative or process. Because as it says, it's a collection of philosophies or thinking, that was the right word. It's a collection of thinking that emphasizes that knowledge is in two major. There is what we call the goodness of it and the badness of it. So this is what tests the knowledge in terms of qualitative characteristics of the knowledge. And so that's why you've seen there the conditions, the situations, the actions that is necessary to be put up in order to prescribe the knowledge that we have come up with. And so here it talks more of knowledge. Being a researcher, your process of coming up with the new truth, your process of coming up with the knowledge is also as important as the knowledge itself. And so if in any way you miss up any description as per the parameters set, it would find a challenge in your results at the end of it all. And so normativists, what they stress more is not just the source of the knowledge, but also they emphasize of the characteristic of knowledge that you've acquired. And for that matter, we talk about what is the quality of even the researcher, the quality of the research instruments, the quality of the study organization you went to carry out the research on. What are the parameters set for you as a researcher to observe in order to come up with that kind of knowledge or that kind of research that you come up with? And for that matter, we say there, it is emphasizing on the values, not only people. I'm trying to deviate because this one was much meant for business students, where we are talking about an economical research, and some of the parameters that we use in setting up an economical research is people-based values, where we talk about the issues of effectiveness, the efficiency, the economy. We want to look at the socio-economical parameters that are set, the quality of life, so that you don't just go into a particular study institution not having set the parameters that you want to use to gather the data that you come up with. And therefore, these are the things that normally the normativism consider it the outcome of your knowledge or the data that you come up with as either having good or having bad. In the other world, they either call it, you either base it on extrinsic factors, which are internal, or you consider it on intrinsic, which are internal, or extrinsic, which are external factors. And so we consider much of that, so that when we will be now carrying out the research, there are things that like biasness of the researcher, how to avoid the biasness, the reliability of the information, and all those things are tested scientifically and they are proven. And so that is how the philosophy of normativism normally comes up with. As we said, that refers to the position that desirability of the results or outcome can be known or based on the experience. This is where we understand that before a researcher goes out into research, you must have some basic truth about what you want to research about. And how do we test your knowledge about the research field that you want to go and carry out your research? We test it using the hypotheses that you have given in your research document. So if the hypotheses are strong, or for this matter, if the research questions are strong, then we can deduce that these research questions can be able to give you the desired outcome. So in the really chapter 1 of your research would be able to understand whether this particular research would bear fruits. If it is not so, we would be able to understand that it will not be able to give us the outcome that we desired. Okay? Now,
yeah, we have about 10 minutes and then we can take some questions.
yes.
Yeah, so I think we are doing well.
Okay, so now, pragmatism. From the process that we've carried out, pragmatism mostly is prescriptive. We prescribe the type of knowledge that we want to come up with. And more so, as I said earlier, research is based on two things. Either we are filling the knowledge gap or we are solving a problem. And for this matter, we look at what are the beliefs that would help us to come up with either filling the knowledge gap or solving the problem. So in solving problem, probably it is an invention. We invent, something has come, like now the world is under attack of the coronavirus. People are in the laboratories today trying to come up with a vaccine. Whoever that will come up with a vaccine first and it will be accepted by World Health Organization, that will be an invention. The necessity of the research that is ongoing today in the laboratories because of that vaccine is a problem that we normally, we are in, all of us. And so the world is trying to come up with a solution. So that one is what now the pragmatists would want to prescribe, the knowledge that they will get out of all that. And I want to say that it is also a win, even when you will not come up with the desired results, because you would have described the process. And that process, whoever that will come later, would be able to follow on to that, learning from the mistakes that either the previous researcher carried out to come up with the new knowledge. And so they believe that positivists value free knowledge and normativists value knowledge to be independent. So what do? That's why we have something known as the workability. What is the appropriateness of the problem at hand? And so they come up with a criteria of what we call judgment. Well, how do you judge? And so how was it, the process that you used in coming up with the particular outcome that you come up with? As you see from the screens, we've said that this was so much in force in the early 21st century, that is in the 19s. But even the scholars say that whoever came up with this particular philosophy didn't know that to gain the popularity that it gained more so after his death. So we do not want to go through the history of all that, but you can be able to make it as a reading to-do list so that you can come up with that. But majorly, the main reason why we're here is for you to be able to understand how you can come up with the parameters that you use to set up the processes of your research based on each and any kind of philosophy. And so I've decided to describe a bit of the test of workability according to this kind of philosophy. And so the first one, we have the clarity. They say you must state clearly the process from the beginning till the end. If the process is not stated, then that's where you see that if the solution is not ambiguous or vague, then there is an issue. In this kind of a parameter, we use or we allow or we scholar, this researcher must declare, and more so it is in descriptive research, it's actually in chapter 3, where you declare the reliability of the instruments that you are going to use, because there are varieties of instruments that you would use. So whichever you choose upon, how reliable is it in solving the problem that we intend to solve? And then we talk about cohesiveness. The coherence is whereby you describe the work, and that one is always tested even as in chapter 2. We want to see how you go through the literature review, what is the process of coming up with theoretical frameworks, the critical review, and how you come up even with the, if it is not an interpretivism research, how you come up with the, what we call the conceptual framework. And so, as we say, the pragmatism as a philosophy plays a very important role in terms of problem solving, because from there, they will document, not only coming up with the outcome, but they will document the process so that the after research will be very key. And that's why most of us, all, in fact, not most, all of us in this particular presentation or in this particular meeting, we are made based on the processes of the earlier scholars. We go through the documented procedures of what they used to come up with the outcomes that they came up with, for us to be able to critique and even improve on them or come up with the new phenomena. That is it. So, how do philosophies blend? I want to take questions. If it's not bad.
Yeah, there are several questions. So I don't know how you want to do this. Do you want to complete in the next 3 minutes and then we take questions?
Yes.
Okay.
If you allow me.
Yeah.
Now, allow me not to go through the blending of these, just to come and summarize. The slides will be given to all of us, I know, in case there is maybe a question we might want to ask based on either slide that you would not understand or some information that is there that is not elaborate, we'll be glad to answer. But all this that I've brought comes up even with this one to the second last slide. So allow me to go to the second last slide, because that's where now we'll get more on how to blend this particular research. Now, this is the summary of blending the research philosophy and the paradigms. As we are aware, and I've only talked about the two, I'm aware I've not talked about the ontological philosophy, and the methodological part, which is also part of what we've talked about into the scientific approach. But I want to take, because of limitation of time, just a few minutes to explain how one can be able to blend his or her research in a given philosophy using a particular paradigm that we talked about. So, how do you know your research either falls into either an ontological philosophy, a positivism philosophy, or how do you know that you as a researcher, you have used epistemology? I've explained a bit of it, but epistemology is just but knowledge. You measure knowledge. That's what we talked about in the beginning. So one, as you can see, this table has got columns and rows. It is very important for a researcher to know that any given research, whether scholarly or journalistic, they have to follow all this particular laid down procedure. You will either find yourself knowingly or unknowingly in a given philosophy. So the only thing that you will not know is whether you will be mixing up or whether you will stick on a given philosophical assumption. And so as that particular given slide probably gives us now how you blend, given your type of research. And this one I would want maybe people to share their areas of research and their type of research challenges they get, so that at the end of it all we can go through. And I'm thankful to the conveners of this that we have, I think it should be a Friday or so, where there is what we call a question and answer. You ask, Wangari, if I'm wrong,
Yes,
you might
yeah.
correct.
Yes, we do have question and answer every 2 weeks on Friday.
Yes,
Yeah.
now that one can be very important, so that you can post all the questions there and we will be able to analyze through, classify them, and be able to give appropriate stand in terms of the scientific methodology of how you wish to carry out your research. Now, if you are a positivist, for example, you view the world into a position that there is some existing truth, and therefore you would want to add either the new truth or you would want to fill the gap that is there. So what will you do? You will now classify if you are following the reality, that this is the reality. So you are an ontological believer, you use ontological assumption, then you will view the world into a single truth, that whatever you are carrying out as part of your scientific research is based on this particular phenomena. And therefore, you want to come out real, understanding that everything in the whole world is based on that. And so the process that you will use now would be now either to now lay out your topic, come up with what we call the research objectives. From the research objectives, you go to the study aims or the specific aims.
Peter, please mute yourself. Thank you.
Yes. Now, from the research objective or specific aims, you come up with, you convert the specific aims into the questions or hypotheses. Hypotheses. Now, those hypotheses would declare your truth that you know. Yes.
Peter, if you mute yourself, it's okay. You can still hear. So just keep yourself muted. Thank you.
Now, from the research hypothesis, now we understand your angle of your philosophy, because we can now judge. Yes. Can we proceed?
Yeah, please proceed.
Yes. Now, I was saying that as you've come a long way from the topic downwards to now where we've reached the research objectives, to the research questions, now we understand your angle of looking at the world. So either it can be either a single view, or you can view it in epistemological way, where we are talking about you will measure, because it is from the research questions and the aims that will be reflected into the instruments of data collection in chapter 3. So if we look at your questions in chapter 1, we'll be able to understand whether you will be able to measure them in the 3rd chapter of your research. And so when we are looking at the analytical tools in chapter 4, we can deduce that this particular student or this particular scholar will assemble either diverse tool or tools for diverse analysis, or you'll use only one single route of analyzing research. And that's why students will come up and declare that we are doing either experimental research, either we are doing what we call descriptive research, or we are doing case study, or we are doing survey. And so we would want to look at it and judge it from chapter 1 in the research questions and the aims.
Right. So we have 10 more minutes to the top of the hour. So maybe one final word. I have seen this topic is colossal. I don't think we can finish it all today. I think you've given us a wonderful overview. Do you have one final sentence? Then we take some comments.
We need to take comments first.
Yes, let me take comments. All right. So there's a question from Aurelia to everyone. Yes. What research philosophy are you using for your study? So after listening to our Mwalimu today, do you actually know your research philosophy? Can you identify your own philosophy? So I'm seeing people typing. There are people who've been able to identify. There are so many comments here, but there is a question from Patrick. He asks, what then is the significance of philosophical paradigms? And then Simon is asking, is literature review a must when you're doing positivism to adequately cover existing knowledge and facts previously gathered? Because you said here we're looking for evidence to confirm something, right?
Yes.
So that is the question from Simon. So I think we can take those two first very quickly. And then there are some people here who've been able to identify their philosophies. That is very good. From your presentation, they've been able to see where their research falls.
Yes. So probably maybe we can begin the first one. Remind me the first question.
Patrick asked, what is the significance of philosophical paradigms?
Yes. Yeah. Now, the significance of philosophical paradigms is that, one, there is no research that can be carried out without falling into a particular paradigm. So whether you know or you don't know, you will embrace a particular paradigm without your knowledge because they are already given. Like I want to explain one, and basing on that, I would want to come up with a particular into two. Either you are using what we call epistemology, or you are using the ontology. I want to do the comparison of those two so that we can see the significance of either of the two. Now, your research, either you carry out a research to fill the gap, positivism, or you'll do a research to solve a problem. You are doing an invention. Now, if it happens that that is what you are doing, then we classify either of the two based on what we will see directly evident from the way you would have structured your research. Now, a paradigm would be able to help the researcher, or will be able to make the scholar understand the researcher's angle in the process of research. Because, like, for example, in developing in knowledge, in filling the gap, the researcher must, and this one I would oscillate to answer the second question, that is it important to do a literature review? This is mostly important to the researchers who are carrying out the research in filling the gap. Because one, since you are not the inventor of that particular subject matter, there are people who have come up with that subject matter, even though not conclusively, that now you aim to come up with whatever you are researching on to fill the gap that was left. And it is always best practice, it's always accepted, and is always also judgmental, that every research at the end of the researcher has to declare that this research will be important, and from the limitations and what next should be done, either further research to be carried out or not. So it is very key.
Yeah, Simon asks about literature review. Is it a must in positivism to adequately cover existing knowledge and facts previously gathered?
Yes, it is very important, because from the existing knowledge, from the existing literature, is when now a researcher will find a standing to lay now your arguments of your research. That you have gone through 1, 2, 3 particular researches, and you've not found either being exhaustive in the particular topic you want to research or in the angle that you want to take. And therefore, based on the documented researches that are existing, so you cannot document such without really reviewing them. So that's why we have at master's level and PhD level, there must be a process that the student will cover in critiquing the existing documents. So you critique the existing documents so that you can now either come up. When you look at the books that we are using even today, whether it's in research or even in your area of study, there has been a revision of those books or the editions that have come up. They come up as a result of the scholars going down the roots from the original and reviewing the existing knowledge of those who wrote earlier about the subject matter. And because of the changing dynamics of the world, now they come up with the new editions that will guide the next research.
I like that you've said there are always revisions, because some people classify things differently. You've mentioned two main, positivism and normativism. There are others, I've seen other categories like realism, interpretivism, and positivism. So I agree with you that different authors will classify differently, but it's all about understanding the context where you're coming from, the philosophical underpinnings of your research. All right. So now that we have 3 minutes, I'm going to ask anybody who has a comment or question as we finish. I'll only take one. So I know you can raise your hand on Zoom, or you can just unmute yourself and talk. So can I take one question, a brief one from any participant? Yeah, I see we are still able now to identify. Gadesha says he has been positivist, but he thinks normative will come in somewhat because he has some qualitative aspects to cover. Anybody who would like to say something? Remember, this session is interactive. Patrick says he has found his method is pragmatism, mixed method, qualitative and quantitative.
Yes.
Yeah, this is very good. People are beginning to identify where their philosophies for their projects.
I'm not hearing from ladies. Ladies, I'm not hearing from the ladies. No one is chatting. What's your philosophy? Louisa, you can tell us.
Thank you for that, Aurelia. The men are talking and the ladies are quiet.
Luis Masharia, what's informing your research design? Louisa, you want to speak? No worries, but I just want to say, this is Aurelia. This is a very important topic, and I think what we will do a lot, maybe with Benson, what we can do is to find an exercise that can help people reflect more about it, and maybe even if it is that table, the last table that you've shown, if people can be able to just identify where they are along that table, just filling in, so that within the entire research, they're really reflecting on the paradigms that they are aligned to. So maybe we can do like a short assignment or a way of reflection beyond this, because I know, so this is a heavy topic for most people, And
Yes.
if it's practiced, it's easier. It's actually quite easy when someone practices to identify and all that. But this was really a good session. Thank you.
True. I agree.
Mhm. All right, so our time is up, but always remember you can join Journal Club. Our facilitator is available, ready to take in more questions and comments. I had posted the link on our guests. I know we have some guests today who are knowing about Journal Club for the first time. Journal Club is one of the programs under AIDA Africa, where we have peer-to-peer learning, we exchange knowledge, we do this all for free. We have people, volunteering on any topic they want to present, and we have presentations like this. Tomorrow, we also have another presentation. I can see Patrick is here, he'll be facilitating us. So if you're available tomorrow evening, you are welcome to know more about accountability bodies. Thank you so much, Bwana Benson Barasa. This has been very insightful. I'm seeing from the comments that people are actually now growing in their knowledge of the philosophies. And I think now you should take us on a journey. Call us for the next one and the next one. We want to know more. Yeah, learning is endless.
It's true.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much. And I think we can call it a day.
Yes, I'll be glad.
Okay, thank you very much. So kwaherini, let me post the link again for our guests if you'd like to join Journal Club. Let me find it. You can please unmute yourself, say thank you, goodbye, whatever you want to say.
Thank you and goodbye.
Okay, thanks, Mary.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks, bye.
Okay.
Asante sana, Benson. We appreciate.
Okay.
And so thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Isabella, for coming.
Thank you so much. It was lovely. Thank you. It was a great presentation. Thank you.
And you're welcome to join us. I know you're not yet a member of Journal Club. Karibu sana. Tunapenda watu wa Catholic University pia.
Asante.
Yes.
Thank you, Joyce, for the nice lead us into this. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Isabella. Yeah.
Joyce, I wanted to mention that we'll be having mock presentations next week.
Yeah.
So if you know you've ever sat in a panel in the university where you've given students feedback on their thesis it's called the defense.
Yes,
please, you're in the Journal Club, please just inbox me. We don't want the presenters to know who is the panelist. So just inbox me, and then we will design the questions to ask the presenter. So our first mock presentation will be next week Monday. Friday.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And how could I forget this? Thank you, Aurelia, for organizing this platform for us. Asante sana. Yeah.
All a pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So David, if we have saved the chat, now we can end the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I forgot to mention my mwalimu was here. Okay, but it's all right.